This program is presented by Drake University on iTunes U, a service of the Drake Telemedia Center.
My honor to introduce our panel of distinguished guests that just happened to be in Des Moines, and when I saw them at a national meeting a couple weeks ago, I asked them if they would be willing to come over and talk to students and faculty at Drake, and without any hesitation at all, they all jumped at the chance. And so I know they're all very impressed that you are sitting here on a Friday afternoon at 3:30. So anyway, it's great to have you here. It's great to have our panelists here as well. I'm going to let each of them give more specifics. I've asked them to talk about their backgrounds and give some professional pearls, what they would like to have students know. And I know they all appreciate students, and a number of you are APHA members, and so you probably have seen emails and a variety of things from Tom Minigan, who is the CEO and Executive Vice President of APHA. And also with us is Mindy Smith, who used to be the Executive Vice President and CEO of the Arizona Pharmacists Association, and maybe before that, Wyoming Association. And she's now the APHA Foundation CEO, Executive Vice President. And then we have Becky Sneed, who is with NASPA, and NASPA is the National Alliance of State Pharmacy Associations. I know all of you are very familiar with IPA and the Tom Temples and people like Tom Temple. They all meet with Becky, and so she corrals all of them I don't know, multiple times a year, 3 or 4 times a year they get together, and she used to be, well, part-time before she became full-time at NASPA, and then also Virginia State exec. And then April Shaughnessy, who comes over from Creighton today, but is actually with AMCP, and I know some of you with the AMCP chapter had the opportunity to have lunch with her. So with that, I'm going to let them spend most of the time here talking about their backgrounds and how they got today, or where they are today, and the professional pearls. So I think that the women have elected Tom Minigan to go first. So it's a tough crowd. They were really razzing him earlier, so.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you for being here, and thanks, Renee, and thank you, Dean. Maybe she, oh, hey. Yeah, they were kidding me saying that, you know, we know that you talk a long time, so you go first. Now, what they didn't realize was if I sit down after 5 minutes, they're out of luck. That means they've got to have something to talk about. But it really is a pleasure to be here. You know, I'm the hired guy that APHA hired to help lead the organization, and I work for a board of trustees. And on that board, elected by our membership, including some of our student leadership who now have a vote in that process in electing our trustees. Matt Osterhaus is with us today, and Matt drove me from Moline Airport last night across the state of multiple visits to pharmacies along the way, and a visit earlier today with another pharmacy school who will remain unnamed. And so it's a real pleasure to be here. I am here to honor Tom Temple tonight at his a bit of a send-off party for him. Tom and I have known each other a long time, and I'll give you a little background about how I got to know Tom and why it's been such a pleasure. You know, my job gets me traveling a lot, and we bring a lot of people into Washington for our meetings on a regular basis, and so my staff will shop new hotels from time to time. Soon after I took my job, I was staying in the new hotel that we had secured called the Palomar Hotel in Arlington, Virginia, right across the river from APHA, not very far from our building. And I was checking out the morning after my stay, and I had missed breakfast. I'm standing there sort of waiting my turn in line, and I see a bowl up here with some cookies in it, and I reach over and I pop one in my mouth and start to chew. Well, I quickly realized it wasn't your average cookie. And as hints of liver and grain began to well up in my mouth, I realized it was a dog biscuit. Well, you know, not to look stupid, I continued, and I went ahead and chewed it up and finished it off. And it was dry and you know, not nearly sweet enough, but the second one wasn't too bad. Anyway, it's Friday, right? Well, so Renee asked me to share a little bit with you about my career path. So I'll do that and then talk about sort of where we are today and maybe spend a couple of minutes talking about where we might be and you might be in the future. And hopefully at the end, if I don't talk too long and these ladies don't talk too long, we'll have some time for questions, right? So I'm from a small town in West Virginia called Sistersville, about 2,000 people when I lived there. Now it's more like 1,800. And went to high school there and all of that stuff. But in junior high, my parents got me a chemistry set, and I would play around with the chemistry set. The chemistry set led me to the pharmacy to replenish my supplies. Somewhere along the line, we learned, my friends and I learned how to make gunpowder. And so while we weren't terrorists, we did like to make pipe bombs and throw them in the river and watch them blow up and that sort of thing. You know, pipe bomb sounds like some terrorist thing, but we really weren't malicious with them. We just liked the noise. But in any case, my father met the new pharmacist. My father was a banker. A new guy comes to town, buys a pharmacy, and he's talking to my dad. And my father tells him, I'm interested in pharmacy. And he said, well, send him up. I'll find something for him to do. And that was the summer before my 7th grade year in school, 7th grade year. And I started working there at Phillips Pharmacy, and that was the beginning of my pharmacy career. That was around 1965. Don't do the math for right now. In any case, one of my first jobs was shaving ice for a soda fountain. I would sit at a small tub and chip away at big blocks of ice and make ice for the Coke and soda fountain and that sort of thing. And then the janitor, longtime janitor, retired, and I started working cleaning the floors and sweeping, and then I'd fill the vial drawers after school, and so it went. Did my pharmacy externship hours, internship hours there all the way through college, and after college remained very good friends with Jim Phillips, and to this day see him as a longtime mentor and friend, and really have enjoyed my relationship with him. I never really thought about anything other than community pharmacy practice through those years. Really didn't have those perspectives. And so one message I would give you today is think about building perspective all along your career path, and always look for new opportunities and new ways to see things and new ways to see old things. And part of that is building a network of people and being willing to ask them questions and probe them about what they've learned in their own careers. So that's sort of lesson number one is build perspective. So pharmacy school at West Virginia University, if you think about those years, ASP, then Student APHA, was a fairly young organization. And we did have a chapter at West Virginia University. It wasn't a particularly active chapter, but I did get involved in doing talks on anti-drug abuse my last couple of years in pharmacy school. I was just an average pharmacy student. I wasn't especially good at anything. Organic chemistry about killed me, you know. But beyond that, as I got into my last couple of years of pharmacy school, things began to click. My grades began to rise, and I really felt like I found where I need to be in my career. I sort of expected that I would own a store at some point, and so after pharmacy school, I went to work for Thrift Drug, a chain that's long since been acquired. But at the time, Thrift was a pretty good company to work for, and they taught me a lot. And along the way, you know, I got married. My wife, Jeannie, while I was doing the pharmacy, she was teaching school, and we saved her income and we put it in the bank. And so after 5 years of working for Thrift, we opened a medicine shop in Huntington, West Virginia. Within a few months of opening the medicine shop, we learned that Jeannie was pretty sick. One thing led to another. She was, and not only was she sick, but she was pregnant. And so I now have a 32-year-old daughter. But in the course of that, Jeannie proceeded through her pregnancy, delivered normally, and then for the next 5 years was bedfast. And during that time, the thing called the Hickman catheter was invented, and the Hickman catheter was being used for TPN. And so Jeannie was starving to death from the chemo she was receiving, and as a result was sent home in one of the few programs at the time that did that at Duke University. So we got her home, and I literally mixed her TPN on my kitchen counter. 18 months of that got her back to oral foods again, and we sort of went on our way, and she began to recover over the next few years. And while she did pass away a few years ago, she lived long enough to see our daughter graduate from college and get a master's degree. So, you know, pretty remarkable things when you think about the fact that she had 3 tumors that were pretty serious. But the part of that that's important for you to know about is that you can take really adverse situations and turn them into something positive. In addition to sort of the fulfilling part of working with Jeannie and raising a family, I also learned about home TPN. And that experience got me together with 2 other pharmacists, and those 2 pharmacists, we pooled our talents. Each of us had different things that we liked to do. And I was the one who went out into the home and started patients on their home TPN or antibiotics or pain management or whatever. And we sort of built the rules for this with our own state board of pharmacy that didn't quite know what to do about pharmacists who were in the homes providing IV therapies. So we helped them build a set of rules using Florida's as an example. And during the same time, I was getting involved in local association and then state association work. So we had a new baby, a new business, and then soon a second new business, and a you know, sort of a tough situation with health-wise. But all of that really gave me additional perspectives and got me involved in a lot of different things beyond just my medicine shop pharmacy that I started then in 1978. So here we are then around 1985, 86. I'd been involved sort of pretty well at the state level. I'd gotten involved in a number of charity organizations like the Cancer Society and Diabetes Association and hospice. That gave me additional perspectives in sort of how volunteer organizations work. I had done some work with the state association, but really hadn't done anything much nationally until I got invited to do talks on home infusion therapy for APHA. And that was really my first real interface with APHA other than very brief stuff in college. When I got to APHA, got involved with the organization in providing these talks. One thing led to another. I got introduced to other people, and along the way, while I was giving a talk at a student mid-year regional one time, one of their staff members invited me to join their staff, and I felt like that was a higher calling. By this time, I'd sort of figured out that APHA was for stuff. And I liked working with people who were for stuff and trying to build and create. So I joined the staff in 1987 for my first tour of duty on February 2nd, 1987. Worked there about 5.5 years, got very involved with things like physician dispensing and fighting that. At the time, mail order was the evil empire, and we worked really hard to battle that. We were there when the Medicare Catastrophic Coverage Act was debated and passed, that created the first Medicare drug benefit, although it was later repealed. But out of the Medicare Catastrophic Coverage Act came the concept of retrospective drug utilization review, or DUR. Well, while the act was repealed, DUR found its way into state Medicaid programs, and in OBRA 90, the Omnibus Act in 1990, retrospective DUR was required for state Medicaid programs. So I left APHA and joined a small startup called Farmark, and we built a DUR system that state Medicaid programs could use. And we took that program, and my job, because I had such a good network with state associations through my work at APHA, we began to market that DUR program nationally. And we got contracts in Illinois, New York, Montana, Wyoming, Oklahoma, and Arkansas in a fairly short period of time. So once again, you know, you think about it a little bit, and my second pearl is don't be afraid to take a flying leap, because your pharmacy career, your pharmacy training gives you a platform where, yeah, I know there are challenges, you know, here and there, pockets of places where pharmacists have a hard time finding jobs. But for the most part, and especially coming from a place like Drake, you'll be so well prepared that you should be able to find a job just about anywhere. Now, it may not be your dream job, but it's enough of a job and enough of an assurance of a job that you should feel comfortable taking a flying leap. So my first flying leap was starting a pharmacy. My second flying leap was starting a home infusion practice. My third flying leap was leaving all of that to join APHA with no assurance that I'd be good at it. I just took a flying leap. It was a higher calling. So the next flying leap was leaving APHA, which had become pretty comfortable at that point. And so maybe that's another pearl. You know, if you really are interested in building a career, don't allow yourself to get too comfortable. Started Farmark, the DUR business. At this point, our daughter was an adolescent, and it was a challenging adolescence. And basically, she was in a really big school in Fairfax, Virginia, and it just wasn't working for her. And she was making us miserable. So we decided to leave Fairfax, Virginia, in the D.C. area, and move back to West Virginia, back into our home infusion practice. So I rejoined my partners there, and still owned the medicine shop at this point, but had another partner running it. And we began to build our practice. And over the next 6 years, we built our home infusion practice, began to do specialty pharmacy with drugs like growth hormone for short stature kids. And along the way, then got re-involved with APHA as a volunteer. So I joined APHA as a volunteer, now ran for the board, was elected to the board in 1995, and served on the board then over the next few years, and in 2001 and 2002 was elected president of the APHA board and the APHA. In 2000, I took another flying leap, left my home infusion practice, and listened to some folks who had a pretty good idea for a new business, and moved back to the Washington, D.C. area and started a company called Simrex. And Simrex developed and built out and made and commercialized cornerdrugstore.com. And if you go online now, you'll find cornerdrugstore.com. If you go online now and look for Rational Med, which was a DUR system we built, you'll find that Medco uses it now, and many of the algorithms that we built for conducting DUR and understanding adherence and the like, we built a number of years ago. So, you know, I'm now running Corner Drugstore, and it's run by, or it's backed by venture money and venture capital, and Matt and I had this conversation on the way over here today. VCs are in it for one thing, and that's money. Now, I've never done anything for the money, believe it or not. Everything I've done has really been about, you know, trying to make a difference, trying to do something. Those were the role models I had when I was growing up in that small town. You know, everybody, all the businesses there were owned by they were privately owned locally. And all the people who went to my church, you know, were the business people in town, and the people who hung out with my parents were, you know, the kind of people who I could look up to. And so to me, it was all about making a difference. And, you know, in pharmacy school, I should have shared this with you. One of my favorite quotes from my first dean in pharmacy school, Dean Bachman, was, "You're now entering," and this was his first lecture to us, "You're now entering a career where you never have to worry about making a living, so worry about making a difference." And that really stuck, and it sticks today. So let's see. Venture capital, they're in it for the money, and at that point, after a couple of years of driving this business, I realized that while we're profitable, and lots of pharmacies are beginning to use Corner Drugstore as their for independence and regional change, using it as their website, their way to connect with their patients online back in 2000, 2001, when not a lot of people were doing that, we were doing okay. But we were never going to make the kind of money that the VCs wanted, and so I recommended we sell, and we did. So in 2002, for the first time since I was 7 years old with the paper route, I was without a job. Another flying leap. And so in 2002, for about a month, July of 2002, I didn't have a job. And then I got a phone call from Ray Bullman, who runs NCPI, the National Council for Patient Information and Education. He said, "Tom, I got a project for you if you've got some time." And I became a consultant. Over the next few years, I got involved with 340B programs, consumer medicine information, and a number of other things in the technology world, including risk management, now known as REMS programs, those programs that help us manage difficult drugs in the marketplace and keep them safe. One of those initiatives was around supply chain integrity and the notion that we really don't like counterfeit drugs to find their way into pharmacies in America. And I began working with a group of folks who wanted to help regional wholesalers do a better job with their operating procedures in order to be safer about how they receive, store, ship, and buy pharmaceuticals. At the time, there weren't many laws about in the wholesale world, much like there are in pharmacy or at the other end of manufacturers. And wholesalers were buying low and selling high, and their arbitrage business was the big part of their profitability. So wholesalers would time price changes and try to guess when Merck was going to raise their prices and buy a carload of something the day before Merck raised their price, and the next day have an appreciated stock in stock that they could sell to other wholesalers. And products were moving 5 and 6 times throughout the marketplace over that period of time. Well, manufacturers didn't much like that, and they began saying to wholesalers, "You've got to stop, you've got to only buy from us." And wholesalers said, "Well, if we're only going to buy from you, you have to pay us to distribute your product because we can't make money on arbitrage anymore." Thus became a total flip in the business model between wholesalers and manufacturers around 2003 and 4. Well, we had been writing SOPs for wholesalers during that time and began to think, well, we've about finished this project, so what are we going to do now? And so we began selling our services to manufacturers to audit wholesalers to be sure that they were doing the things that they said they were going to do in their fee-for-service agreements. So manufacturers and wholesalers were now contracting with each other. Manufacturers were paying big money to wholesalers, and to this day still do, to distribute their products. So we built an audit system to go figure out whether they were actually doing that or not. Now that had 2 major pieces. One was auditing operations, and since I had written SOPs for wholesalers, I knew how they were supposed to operate. And the other piece was the data. Taking data from a manufacturer that says, we know this is what we sold to this wholesaler, and then taking the data from the wholesaler and that says, this is what we say we sold to our downstream customers, and this is what we say we bought. And out of that, we did a lot of data analysis to figure out whether wholesalers were selling more from a company than they were buying. in which case it might be coming from some other source. And that was some of the early work that we did around supply chain integrity. And over the years, then the next 4 or 5 years, we took that internationally, literally, and began to help monitor the flow of drugs from manufacturers to wholesalers into pharmacies around the world. So that was the company that I was running when I was about to take another flying leap. And I was minding my own business and had been very involved with APHA, but at this point it had been 2 or 3 years since I'd really been directly involved, and a lot had happened in that time. And one of those was that John Gans, who at one point had been my boss in 1989 when I was still on staff at APHA, and then a few years later when I was elected to the board and I was his boss as the president of APHA. So now John Gans announces his retirement and says, and I'm thinking, well, that'd be an interesting job. Maybe I should think about that. And I sort of was half-hearted about it when I got a call from a friend. And the friend said, you are going to apply for the job, aren't you? And I said, well, I'm thinking about it. And he said, well, you really need to think hard about it. And then I asked my wife, and she said, well, you know you'd love it and you'd be good at it. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to throw my name in, and I wrote the letter, and I said, I'm interested in the job. The next piece of really good advice I got from a longtime friend was, you're not going to have another shot at this, ever. Think about your age. People tend to stay in this job a while. You're never going to have another shot. So if you're going to make a run for it, take it seriously and really prepare for it. And so that's the other pearl that I would share with you. If you really want to do something, prepare for it. And there's no such thing as over-preparation. So I sort of lived that over the next few months. It was a very confidential search, so I couldn't tell a bunch of people that I was running for this job. I had to sort of keep my head down and just do the work and prepare for it. And I'm so grateful today because I have the privilege to come to places like this and talk to people like you who have such great futures and talk about all the good things that APHA is up to and how we and people like this are behind you 100% of the way, and we're here to help you and serve you in your careers. So, that's the other pearl, is just service and how rewarding service can be. This is a phenomenal career that you're entering. You'll have dozens, if not hundreds, of ways to make a living. So I would just encourage you, don't just make a living, make a difference. And I think probably I've taken about 15 minutes. I haven't been timing it. But I'll stop there, and hopefully we can get into what's the future of pharmacy and all of that stuff after these young ladies talk. Okay? If I could, I failed to mention one thing. In this month's Pharmacy Today, on page 50, is a really good article written by Randy McDonough. It's just his observations on his first 5 years in pharmacy practice, taking a flying leap, leaving academia, starting a business, and looking back on the 5 years and what it's been like. And his comment is something about shutting out the noise and listen to yourself sometimes. And I think that's a good piece of advice, so I commend it to your reading.
Were we right or what? No. Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation to be here. My name is Mindy Smith. I, compared to Tom, have been out of school since 1998. And my parents still do not understand what I do on a daily basis. You do what? She works for APHA and the foundation and association, and I call them when I have good and bad news. But they know I'm a pharmacist, and it's fun. How I ended up in this position, and all of us, I would say, is by happenstance. But with that is my first pearl of wisdom is to put yourself in situations, or surround yourself, I should say, with people that are movers and shakers. So I would say make sure you're surrounding yourself with a network of people who are making things happen, whether it be at your workplace, whether it be at the state level, and also at the national level, being involved with APHA and national pharmacy organizations that represent your practice setting. That's very, very important, and I would say that led and has been part of my success. I went to school at the University of Wyoming, the least populated state in the nation. I was born and raised in Nebraska. Go Cornhuskers. And in Wyoming, I graduated from pharmacy school, and my first job was at an independent pharmacy in northern Idaho. At that time, my husband was not able to find a job up there after we moved, after graduating from pharmacy school. And so we came back to Wyoming, and the only job available was in Casper, Wyoming at a hospital. Well, I'd never thought about hospital pharmacy. In fact, when I started independent pharmacy, I went and I got my diabetes certificate. I was working with diabetic patients in the pharmacy, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'd never thought about hospital pharmacy, and it's the only job available. I'm gonna apply for the job. Got the job. Best thing that ever happened to me. So it put me in a very uncomfortable situation and tested myself and my skill set, and I fell in love with hospital pharmacy at that point. Went from Casper, Wyoming to, for some personal reasons, moved down to Cheyenne, Wyoming, again, still in a small state, about a 200-bed hospital in Cheyenne, where I really, I guess my second pearl of wisdom would be don't settle for the status quo. So when you're in a certain situation in your workplace, make things happen, make things change, and make sure that you're taking care of your patients. So one thing that I did when I was at the hospital there is I co-founded and directed an anticoagulation clinic. So I was able to mix up my day at the hospital, my routine, and spend 2 days at the anticoag clinic. And during that time, I was involved in the state association in Wyoming, and during that time, my mentors and my boss at the hospital was the president of the Wyoming Pharmacists Association. She came into work one day and was saying, oh, we're looking for a new executive director. And so I said, well, what? I'm kind of interested. What is that? And I'd been involved a little bit with the state association and attending the meetings, knew some of the leadership on the board, and I did not know what I was doing, but I applied, and I got the job. And so I was part-time director for the Wyoming Pharmacists Association and worked full-time at the hospital. So in Cheyenne, Wyoming, the state capitol is 2 blocks away from the hospital. So I would clock out, I'd walk 2 blocks across the street, and I would go to the capitol and I would lobby, and we would get a group of pharmacists together during the session, and we would oppose bills and support bills. We put through the legislation for pharmacists to give vaccines in Wyoming in 2005. Learned from the ground up. I had no idea how to even put a bill through the legislature, and I learned just by making myself uncomfortable, and learned how to get a bill through the legislature, and also how to do some really good, fun things for pharmacy and for our patients. I loved it so much in association management that an opportunity in Arizona came open where they were looking for a new state exec there, and I applied and found myself driving to Arizona in January of 2006, where I became the new CEO of the Arizona Pharmacy Alliance. So my best experience, or I would say one of my I would say an accomplishment for me that I'm very proud of is in 2009 in the state of Arizona, we changed, pharmacists were allowed to give flu vaccines with a prescription. They had to have a prescription to give a flu vaccine. In 2009, we changed the law that allows pharmacists in Arizona to give all adult vaccines without a prescription, without a protocol, and without collaborative practice. So they don't have to have the protocol with a physician, they don't have to have collaborative practice, they can just give the vaccine, all adult vaccines in Arizona. So with that, we were able to pass that legislation, and last year we were able to pass a bill that expanded that authority to children as well, children with a prescription, adult without a prescription. So in looking, when we say we are passionate and fortunate to be in these positions, the big picture is all of the thousands of patients who now have received vaccines from pharmacists in Arizona who can walk in the door and now bring their child with them, and the huge impact pharmacists have, and looking back and saying I was a part of that. And so it's really a blessing to be in these positions, to make things, and be one of the team that makes this happen, with all of the volunteers in the state and the pharmacists who come in and help support that. So I took my flying leap just recently, and I joined the APHA Foundation. I started August 1st. So I'm a baby APHA Foundation executive, and I'm just getting started there, but I'm very excited to be there and have some great, fun, exciting ideas that we're going to be reaching out to the colleges of pharmacy to do some fun work, and again, carry the profession of pharmacy forward as we all are working together. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mindy. My name is Becky Sneed, and I am the Executive Vice President of the National Alliance of State Pharmacy Associations. And I thought that we did a tremendous strategy because we wanted to make sure that you could hear Tom's story. I think that it was so powerful to see the journeys that we all take. Think about the number of diverse practices and people and policies that the two individuals that have spoken before me were able to do, and know that that could be you. I talked to so many pharmacy students throughout my career, and they're very, very concerned. Am I going to be able to find a job? Oh my gosh, what job am I going to have? How am I going to prepare for that job? And while I feel that pain, and I know exactly where you are, know that your journey is going to be a bunch of leaps and a bunch of making yourself uncomfortable. And you will take many, many, many divergent paths along the way. I grew up in a small town as well. It seems to be a theme. Maybe that's a sign of a great leader, grow up in a small town. And I guess when I try to characterize myself, I think I'm a wife, a mother, a caregiver, a pharmacist, and a volunteer. And sometimes the priority order that I would say that changes, but my caregiving began at a very early age because my father had rheumatoid arthritis, very severe rheumatoid arthritis, before I was ever born, and I was the youngest of 4 kids. By the time I was old enough to toddle around, my father had to quit work, and we moved back to the farm, and he was left there to care for me, and I quickly assumed the role of caregiver for him. My daily routine every morning getting up as a 4- and 5-year-old was try to help my dad put his socks on because he couldn't do that by himself. Try to help him put his shirt on because he couldn't do that either by himself. Try to help him get the can of soup out of the cabinet, or try to figure out how to open it. And I think that was what sparked my caregiver passion, if you will, and my pearl is passion. It's got to be passion. Don't worry if your first job out of pharmacy school isn't everything that makes you excited every day, but don't wait too long and get too comfortable. Go and find that role that makes you excited every single day. I have a 13-year-old, and I had one of these roller coaster weeks where I was in 4 or 5 states and landed to the airport, and I needed to be at a presentation. I made it to the presentation. Then my son had a basketball game, and so I'm changing in the car to go to the basketball game. And as we are driving home, my son and my husband were in the front seat, and I just said, I've just got to lay down back here. I've got to go just take a nap. And it was only 20 minutes home, but I was spent. And so I heard my son and my husband just chatting like they do, and my son said to my husband, "Is Mom okay?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, she's fine." I said, "Well, why does she do it?" And my husband said something that is the most remarkable statement, but it was so very, very true. He goes, "Robert, your mother's never worked a day in her life. She loves every moment of every day, and so it's not like it's a job to her. Yes, she gets tired. Yes, we all compromise, and we all do crazy things sometimes to make it all work. But just hope and pray that one day you can be just like her and never work a day in your life." You have that opportunity, each and every one of you, with this wonderful career that you're about to embark upon. Pharmacy is the most fabulous career because you're able to do so many different things. I got to tell you, my journey is not a whole lot different than either Tom's or Mindy's, so I won't take you through the steps, but I would love to visit with each of you individually. I'll give you my email address. If you have any questions, absolutely. Know that I would be so honored and privileged to get an email from you to ask any question whatsoever if you don't get to ask it today. My name is Becky Sneed, but it's really Rebecca, so it's RSNEAD at NASPA, NASPA.US. So find your passion is my pearl for you, and I look forward to questions after Miss April has an opportunity to share with you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me too. I'm also here today in Des Moines to honor Tom Temple, who has been the state exec through my career, almost from graduation. Well, pretty much since graduation. I went to school at Creighton, and I did not grow up in a small town. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, so I guess it was a small town. The neighborhood was small. And picked Creighton because I liked the pre-pharmacy program. I knew nothing else about it, just that's where I went. I found out about Creighton on a Saturday when they had one basketball game a weekend on TV, and they profiled the 2 schools, and they said there was going to be a new school of pharmacy built in 1975, and I went, oh, that's perfect, I'll go there. And that's how I ended up at Creighton, and just drove right past Des Moines. And thankful I went to Creighton because, well, we beat Drake Wednesday night in soccer. Okay, because I'm kind of a hostile crowd. I was at UNMC yesterday, and there was also a little hostile crowd. But anyway, when Tom was talking about everyone's journey, we were kind of laughing that it's happenstance. It's kind of circular. I said it's like the GPS telling you recalculate, because you're constantly changing. And you're just taking a different route. It was a nun in the 2nd grade that told my parents I was good in math and science. What kind of good are you in math and science in 2nd grade? You can add, I don't know. That I said, okay, 2 plus 2, that's great. So then I started looking in about the 7th grade, stumbled upon pharmacy and went talked to the corner pharmacist. I went, okay, that sounds good. And that's what I was going to do. And I had no other, that was it, that's what I was going to do. And all I knew about really pharmacy was the corner drugstore at that time. So got into pharmacy school, got into Creighton and then applied, had a little organic problem too. We have a very similar path, Tom. I didn't know that till today. And then graduated, actually I was telling some folks at lunch today, had a really awful hospital rotation, inpatient hospital rotation, and swore I never, ever, ever, ever would practice in hospital pharmacy. About 6 months later, I found myself at the University of Chicago interviewing for a position, and the person interviewing me was Paula Bramowitz, who just left University of Iowa to become the new exec at ASHP. So my first pearl is pharmacy, very small, very, very, very small. And active pharmacy, the folks you'll see every day at meetings or anything, even smaller. So I guess the second pearl is you're always auditioning for your next position. And auditioning sounds kind of bad, but maybe you're always interviewing. You never know where that next offer for a position might come. And my current position was never advertised. It was just kind of an idea that our exec, Judy Cahill at AMCP, knew that she wanted to create this position that had dealt with student pharmacists and outreach to community practice. And she came up to me at a meeting and said, we're going to have this new position, and as soon as the board approves it, I'd like you to take it. Okay, what's it about? And she told me, she goes, because when I created it, I thought of you. And I thought, okay, and we had never really, we talked a little bit, but we were at a lot of meetings together, served on a lot of task force, different projects that national pharmacy associations do, and so I thought to myself, all these meetings we had been in together, I was actually auditioning for this position that I knew nothing about over several years. But so pharmacy is really small. You're always auditioning for a position, and my leap, big leap, was I was practicing at Walgreens in Chicago, and really had had enough of high volume pharmacy, and I was pretty stressed at the time, and went to an APHA annual meeting and met up with some friends from then SAFA-DAYS or APHA-ASP that I hadn't seen in a really long time. And I was whining and moaning and groaning about how miserable I was, till finally they all said, at a bar, closed, it was the lobby bar at a hotel, and we had been there long enough for now it was closed, to say, either do something about it, your career and how miserable you are, or be quiet. And they were not exactly sober at the time. I won't say entrust your careers as a pearl to somewhat not sober friends, but in this case it worked out okay. So that pearl is, your mentors don't necessarily have to be old coots or somebody that is much older than you. It can be your colleagues and your peers and people you met in school. And because of the relationships we had developed over time, they were from the University of Iowa, from Drake, from Creighton, from Minnesota, the Region 5 group, I trusted them. And they said, you need to do something else or just be quiet. And so at that APHA meeting, there was an advertisement for an executive resident in association management. And it was going to be their second resident. And I thought, well, that could be kind of fun. What did I know? All I knew about in school, it was really fun to go to meetings. And I thought, well, it might be that would be really fun. You just go to meetings all the time and go to parties. That would be great. But I thought, yeah, they'll never take me. You don't do a residency 6 years after, school. I'm too old. They won't take me. So that same group of drunk friends the next night said, here's your chance to either be quiet or do something. And what's it cost? All it's going to cost you is a stamp. Put a stamp on the letter, send it in, be quiet, see what happens. So I did. I got the residency, started a few months after Tom, and we affectionately called the class of '87 at APHA, with the intent of being there 1 year. 20 years later, I was still there and had a variety of different positions at APHA. So every few years, my association management career recalculated to a different direction. Earned my certification in association management to show others in the association world that I wasn't just a pharmacist in a pharmacy association, that I really understood association management from a broad perspective and could go work anywhere. I always thought maybe the snack food manufacturers would be kind of fun, or the NC2A would be fun, but have stayed in pharmacy all this time. So through all this, those mentors, or friends, really played a huge role in my life. And it doesn't matter how often you see folks after graduation, It's a lot easier now to keep in touch than back in the dark ages. But they will be your friends and support throughout your entire career. So now anytime any one of us has kind of an idea about, well, should we do something different in our career, our mantra is, what's it cost to stamp? And even now, it doesn't even cost to stamp anymore. Just do it. So we take a leap of faith, but ours is called something different. So pharmacy's really small. You never know. Paula Ramrowitz hired me 30 years ago. Really? Oh, God. 29. We'll make it 29 years ago. And look where he is now. And worked with Tom, his first go-around at APHA, and now we work for different organizations, but our two organizations work together all the time. And those mentors are so important to me. So what we want to know from all of you are what your career goals are right now. What are your leadership pearls? You've been in class now, what, 2 months? Come on. I'm going to tell you all about the Drake-Creighton game from Wednesday night and how we were much better. Tim, where are you? Matt, Dr. Osterhaus, tell us a leadership pearl. Okay. Okay. You in the Creighton blue shirt. Okay, I know it's Drake blue too. We'll say it's Cubby blue. How's that? What's something that you've learned in the last 2 months in the leadership class? Or something you've experienced so far in pharmacy school? And then be willing to change that vision. When you see something really fun that you might want to do, it might change. It probably will change. I had about 4 or 5 different jobs in 6 years before I landed in association management, and here 24 years later. God, we're really old, except you.
I have a question. How many of you looked at email today? Raise your hands. I'm amazed. I expected most of you would just text. But you look at email less today than you used to, right? Yeah, about the same. Yeah, okay, very good. All right, all right.
Ask my 13-year-old.
Well, yeah, I have a 16-year-old in the house, and all he does is text. It's hard to get him to look at email. But, question? Any other questions?
I'm really going to start telling you about that soccer game.
Well, you can get Mindy and I both on pharmacist.com. Yeah. What do we see unique in Iowa? Boy, where do we start?
I think I am the role of the comedian here, the comic relief. I think it's not so much pharmacy practice, but it's pharmacy in Iowa. A lot to Tom Temple's leadership is that the number of national leaders that have come from Iowa, that are part of Iowa, Bob Greenwood, just finished as the national president of NCPA. Matt O's on the board. His dad was president at APHA. Amazing amount of leadership out of Iowa, and I think that has a lot to do with Tom's leadership and his support. And nationally, when people talk about pharmacy practice or what do pharmacists think about X, Y, and Z, we'll call Tom, see what they're doing in Iowa. And that's just been my whole experience since I've been in association work.
And I think that contributes to schools of pharmacy in Iowa. The schools of pharmacy in Iowa are hands down, not only nationally known, they're internationally known. And so you can have great comfort that you've got a wonderful practice environment because you've got that wonderful environment to incubate all of the innovation that needs to occur for a profession to thrive. One of the things that I am often fascinated by is, what constitutes a profession? And I think the constant changing to meet the needs of our patients and reinventing ourselves. Not only did we reinvent ourselves in the career path that we took each and every successful pharmacist out there has reinvented themselves as they have met the demands of what the science and the technology and their patients need. And in fact, if you look at the curriculum within the profession of pharmacy and the changes that have occurred even since I graduated, but certainly since Tom graduated, it's phenomenal. And I was speaking to a faculty member at a medical school, and believe it or not, there are medical schools that are now calling them sort of Renaissance, new school medical schools. They are trying desperately to adopt a new curriculum for the practice of medicine because it hasn't been changed in over 100 years. Now, has our patients' needs changed in the last 100 years? Has the science changed in the last 100 years? Has pharmacy changed in the last 100 years? You ought to be really, really proud, because I think that we are poised to be in a real leadership position. And through the universities here in Iowa, as well as the leadership of the state association, you're going to rock it.
Yeah.
It's all about that passion, Dean. You find a way, you prioritize, and your family is sort of just like your work environment is your team. You all give and take. Your family is that team. You all give and take. Your community is your team. But you have to want to have it all.
You're the newlywed.
I am a newlywed. I spent 2 years. My husband lives in D.C., and I spent 2 years going back and forth between Arizona and D.C. before I got the opportunity to join the APHA Foundation. But one thing my husband said is he said, "You love what you do, and do not come to D.C. until you find something that you love to do, or else I don't want to live with you." And so it's about, finding, I guess it's that, finding your partner who supports you, or that your family connection that really supports you. And then emailing Tom yesterday saying, "I've got tonsillitis and Hannah's sick and I'll be working from home." So it's just also having you work really hard and you play hard. And I think that's what keeps all of us really going, but provides that work-life balance. And my family loves, my husband calls himself a pharmacy husband. He just thinks pharmacy rocks, and pharmacists are the coolest people on earth. And so it's the family's excited too because of what we do and what we do for our patients.
We got another question up here. Expose yourselves to as many practitioners in the state as you can. If you're interested in community practice, certainly look at that, but don't blind yourself to other types of practice. Really get out there and build those perspectives. You have incredible practitioners here, some of the most innovative practitioners in the world, literally. So take advantage of that. Get to meetings. Network with people, ask a lot of questions.
And I would echo that. My pharmacist that I grew up working for in that small town, the pharmacist was the biggest employer in the community, and I was the youngest of 13 cousins and sisters that had all worked in the community drugstore there. But he used to take me to local association meetings after work because he knew that I was interested in pharmacy. When I graduated from pharmacy school, I had people asking me if I wanted to work for them because they knew me. And I'm probably a little bit unusual in this group, but I have never applied for a job in my entire career. I've always had people come to me and say, "Got an opportunity. I'd really like you to consider this. And so that networking is so powerful, and you have the tremendous opportunity in Iowa to have the incredible depth and breadth of practitioners to network with. So get out there. I'm a really, really shy person. So and no, seriously, I am a really, really shy person. It's just when I'm passionate about something, I can go outside my comfort zone and I can make a difference. And so, it's hard going to that first meeting or going into a practice that you've never been to before and introducing yourself. But find a buddy, find a pal, take advantage of the opportunity of all of the rotations and experience that you get, and ask them to help introduce you to people that you've heard about or read about in some of the national publications, because chances are they came from Iowa, and you'll have a really good chance to meet them. So.
In case you couldn't tell, pharmacists like to talk about their careers and how they got to where they got, so just ask. There's not going to be one pharmacist that will say, I don't have time to talk to you. They'll be so ready to talk to you about the twists and turns their career took, and you'll be amazed. It'll be just as crazy as our paths are, but they'll want to talk to you about it. And they'll, and then you sort of made a mentor, a word that gets tossed around a lot, and sometimes so much, though I don't think it means anything, but you'll meet that pharmacist again at another meeting that you go to, or later on you might be interviewing them for a job, or they might be interviewing you, so just ask. And I'm really shy too, and I know this is torture sometimes for shy people to come up and do it, but you learn how to do it after time. So take advantage of these kinds of opportunities too while you're in school. Get up and tell your story.
We're out of time.
And now you can all go to Peggy's, right? Do you still go to Peggy's here?
I do go.
I mean, it's been a long time.
Let's put it this way. Peggy's is still in business,
Okay.
so yes. I don't know that any of these students ever go there, but
Yeah, no, too busy.
anyway, too busy studying.
Gotta go to the library.
Actually, there is an establishment called the library. I don't know if you know that. So anyway, let's give a great round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. I can't tell you how much it means to us to have you here with us, and we really appreciate you taking time out of your own personal time to be. You could have been doing other things in Des Moines, but instead you came here. Becky, you shouldn't laugh. There are good things to do in Des Moines. I was serious about that. Thanks. So anyway, we do really appreciate it, and I know that a number of these students have been to a lot of annual meetings and will be in the future, and it's good to make that connection. So thank you again. There's another session going on in here for the P4 students interested in learning about going to mid-year and residencies and all that. So I think